Yeah, well, we- Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special meeting of the Library and Community Center uh, Ad Hoc Site Planning Committee. I'm calling the meeting to order. We will do a roll call first. Before we do that, though, I want to introduce someone new. Dominica Megardician is with us tonight. Dom is our Deputy City Manager, and she is one of the members of our project management team that is working closely with the consultant on this project. So we're happy to have her with us tonight. So the roll call, Janet Braun. Here. Sheila Rossi. Here. Kristen Dubé. Here. Leslie Alderfield. Here. Alexandria Levitt. Here. Tom Afshar. Here. Rich Elbaum.
Here.
Tony Powell.
Here.
Jean Kim.
Here.
Bianca Richards. Here. Victoria Rosa. Here shortly. Dean Serwin.
Here.
Julie Wang. Yes. Jasmine Wong. Jasmine Wong let us know that she would not be here. So we do have a quorum. I will just remind everyone that this is a public meeting, so any public comment that an individual, member of the public would like to make, please fill out a public comment card, which the staff have at the table. Are there any public comments? No. No, there are no public comments and none online. So with that, we will move directly into our first item, which is a presentation by Group 4 Architecture. We have two members of the team that we've been working with, and I'll let them introduce themselves when we turn it over to them. But just so everyone has the context, they've been on site for all day today and have done a number of meetings. They met with some friends of the library. They met with the community services staff. They're meeting with you guys, obviously, and then tomorrow they'll meet with library staff and with the Senior Citizens Foundation. So it's been a very productive day today. We've been, touring all facilities. So really excited to have them here and excited to really kind of kick this off and give everybody a much better idea of what to expect. And Victoria just arrived, so with that. So I'm going to turn it over to
That's okay.
Andrea.
All right, thank you, everyone. We're excited to be here and to have a first opportunity to meet you in person and bring you up to speed on the project, give you a little overview. Oh, I'll go to the agenda side. Give you an overview of the work plan and the work that we will be doing. We'll share with you the project goals that we've identified to date and hope to make sure there aren't any additional goals that this committee wouldn't like to add or refine the goals that have already been identified. For the majority of the meeting, we want to talk to you about our project participation, specifically our community engagement plan, as well as keep you up to date on, as Kathy mentioned, the number of what we're calling technical meetings that we're having with staff. And then we're going to end the meeting with a little bit of preview of the work that we're currently underway with our site assessment and our needs assessment, and then talk about finally the next steps. As Kathy said, our project management team identified up here, Kathy as our staff liaison as the library director, Lucy for community services. Dawn Marcus is the principal in charge of this project. She's unfortunately on PTO, so you get one of me this evening. My name is Andrea Gifford. I'm a project designer with Group 4 Architecture. I'm a principal with the firm. I've been with the firm for over 25 years, so I must have been a baby when I started, a small child. But yes, been working, Group 4 Architecture research and planning really specializes in public projects. We work with agencies and cities like yourself to plan and design libraries, community, recreation facilities, throughout California and across the nation. So we've built libraries as far east as Lexington, Kentucky. I opened that last June. We're working in your neighborhood. We've done the Yorba Linda Library and Cultural Arts Center. We're working over in Santa Ana on their improvements in their library, as well as Palm Springs. We've worked in the past with the city of Carlsbad on their Pole and Dove Library. So we have a lot of knowledge with this Southern California in your area, but we also bring a national perspective, having worked on libraries across the nation and community and senior services throughout California. And so that's a little bit of our background. With me is Vicki White. She's a senior planner in our firm, and she's really assisting our team on all the planning aspects of this. Also in our with our team is Justin. He is a project designer as well, and doing a lot of the graphics and information that you're seeing here today. So a lot of the behind the scenes work. We also have in our team Paige Turnbull. I'm sure a few of you know John Lasak. He is a South Pasadenan. He's been on your planning commission and a number of other boards. He is a principal architect, and working with him is Flora Chow. They are really focused on the historical assessment of this facility and the site, and there will be great resources for us as we move forward. He's in jury duty today, otherwise I think he was planning to attend. So in front of you, we have a little introduction. We call it a blog exercise. It's a bit of a visioning exercise. We would love for you to complete this and provide this information to us. It works like a blog. So at the bottom of the page is where we start today. And then it builds up to what this facility might do on day one when it opens, and the potential impacts it might have 10, 15, 20 years from now. So you can do this throughout the meeting and turn it to us at the end of the meeting. You can also complete this and bring this to Kathy or Lucy or email it to us. And we'd love to have this information on the right sidebar. It's a couple fun, interesting exercises about your favorite thing in South Pasadena, or maybe a library or senior community center that you visited that you found inspirational. Just a way to engage you all, and a sneak peek of what some of the engagement we might be doing with the community as well. So the community will also have an opportunity to talk about their vision and their needs for this facility, and we'll get to that later on in the presentation. So with that, we're going to jump into an overview of the project and the work plan. So we were brought on the beginning of the year. So we started our work in early January, had a little bit of an interruption, as I'm sure most of you had, for a couple of weeks. And so we had, I'd say, a little bit of a slow start because of some unforeseen conditions. But we are really kicking it back up into high gear. And in this first initial task one under project initiation, really doing a lot of information gathering. As Kathy mentioned, we've been touring the facilities, getting to know staff and the operations here on both the library and senior center component. We will then start wrapping that phase up and getting into our needs assessment phase, which is our second task. There we will be going out to the community and talking to city staff about what the community needs and priorities are. At the same time, doing an assessment of this existing facility, as mentioned. During this needs assessment, we have our first task for engagement round. We'll talk extensively about that coming up in the agenda. And once we have a good understanding of the needs, both from city staff and the community, we will start to build our summary of space needs. During that time, we will then go into our third task, which is a comprehensive site plan for the site here. We will do some site analysis, which we are actually starting to work on now. We will develop some strategies based on the space needs that we're developing, and at the same time working with the budget. So we're doing some reiterative processes of honing in on the needs, the strategies, and the budget to get that in alignment, and sharing that information in our second round of engagement with the community. We will then finalize the recommended site plan and present that to council near early fall in September and October. Any questions about the specific work that we were doing? Again, we're keeping it very high level. We're talking a site plan. We won't be developing building floor plans or building diagrams, but just generally looking at site strategies to meet the needs. And I should have mentioned at the bottom is all the wonderful meetings that we're having, and I'll go through those in a little bit more detail on some upcoming slides. Wanted to make sure and assure the community and the ad hoc committee that we're not looking at the surrounding area, even though our site is bound by the senior community center here. But we also are looking at your downtown specific plan and some of the other amenities and assets that are in there, as that is where our current site sits. And also looking at maybe some of the improvements that might be happening along Mission Street. So again, making sure that whatever programming or site plans that we do really build on the information and plans that the city has for the surrounding neighborhood. We'll be digging through the past, looking through and understanding the site through the years. This would be a big component of Paige and Turnbull's work. And at the same time, working with Kathy and her staff to understand the library and all of its various components, from the Friends of the Library to the children's programming, teen programming, adult programming, and working with staff and how they operate and having a good understanding of your existing conditions. We're working with Lucy and the senior center staff to understand the variety of programs and activities that they offer as well. And looking at all of their adjacent facilities. So not looking at the senior center in a vacuum, but what other community and recreation facilities that the city has. So we have a well-rounded view of their needs as well. As I mentioned, Paige and Turnbull will be doing a historic assessment of this resource that you have here and identifying not only the significant historical contributing elements of the building, but also looking at the site. So they'll be looking at the landscaping, the pavement, what of the site is historically significant and a primary contributor to that statement, and what are several secondary or non-contributing historical elements on the buildings and the site. And that will be a good assessment and starting place to jump off of when we get to the site development strategy. So we understand what those limitations are and that we respect those limitations during that phase. As I mentioned, through the work plan, we have a lot of engagement. First and foremost is our project management team, which is comprised of city staff. We will also be conducting on the right a series of technical meetings. As Kathy mentioned, we've already launched that with library staff. We're met with the Friends of the Library. We'll be doing community services staff and the senior foundation. And then working with the variety of different stakeholders, the Board of Trustees and Community Services Commissions, all those that are vested in both the library and senior center. And then in addition to that, if that wasn't enough, we're also going to be working with the community. So we have a series, and we'll review this later on the presentation, a series of pop-ups that we're recommending, as well as a workshop, more formal workshops and meetings. And then of course, working with the ad hoc committee throughout this process and keeping you abreast of what's happening. Any questions about project, or should I save questions to the end, Kathy? I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah.
You can ask us.
Okay. Sorry. So please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to interrupt me. So the first thing we wanted to just check in with this committee is the project goals that have been established for the project. You can see there's just a few of them. They're categorized in 5 different headings. The first one is process goals. And so making sure that we're engaging the ad hoc committee, the community and staff. So we have a well-balanced view of the engagement. I'm sorry. Is there a question?
Can you expand it? I can't read it.
Oh,
We have hard copies of this, or it's on the, we'll upload it to the website as an additional document.
Okay, great. Because of hide the visual.
could be. Sometimes like, oh, here we go. Oh, look at this. There we go.
Yeah.
Hold on. Look at me. I did it. I did it. Okay. So, well, yeah, yay, look at that. Okay, so now more easily read. So engaging, I said, multiple levels of engagement. We have the ad hoc committee, the community, as well as staff. have a good understanding of the library needs and building off the previous work. So we had the strategic plan and current service library trends and usage, and we want to make that and that we're abreast of those identified goals. Also, community and senior center and understanding of their needs and the previous studies and direction that have been provided on their programs and events, and as well as recreation understanding. And coordinating that with other recreation facilities and programs. One of the big things that we don't want to do is duplicate any work that's already been done or programs and services that are already offered in other facilities. Okay. See if I can slide this up. Okay. From a project goal, I think an inspiring, impactful site plan that really maximizes the value of this asset to the community while integrating it with its historical elements, the outdoor space, but at the same time making it a vital and modern facility for the long term. So we really want to balance those historical elements while still bringing this facility to modern day operations and really making this heart of the community. I love this, and a resource and recreation hub that is multi-generational. It's inclusive to not just seniors, but to all those coming to the community center and library, and really transforms this asset in the community and neighborhood. And then when we talk about accessibility, there's always ADA accessibility, but we really, especially when we talk about a facility that will serve senior needs, go use that as a launching off point and talk about this facility and providing universal access to everyone. And that starts from parking, walking, whatever mode of transportation that those are arriving from, but all the way penetrates through the building and all the rooms and programs that will be offered here. And so making sure that we're providing that universal access for all of those individuals. Keep going. Sustainability, a sustainable design. It's a wonderful thing. Cal Green has a wonderful starting and launching off point with Cal Green, the code requirements that are that the state mandates. But we also know that the city has their climate action plan, and we'll be using that and their green action plan as resources to meet those sustainable design goals, and you're consistent with your green infrastructure goals as well. So we'll be looping in and working with your public works and planning staff to make sure that we're identified those and that those are incorporated in the project early on, especially when we talk about the next one, which is balancing the design and sustainability with cost. And here what's important is that we look at both upfront costs, but also your ongoing operational costs and what those long-term savings might be and paybacks on those initial investments. And so we'll, at a very high level, talk about that and build that into the budget and set goals for that. But at the same time, we want to make sure that the design has some flexibility for value engineering. And so when we develop a program in these early stages, we want to make sure that we have identified what those high priority needs are and where in the future, if there's needs to be flexibility in the project based on future funding, that those are identified and can be meet, and that maybe some of the medium or low priority items can be evaluated based on future funding. So again, making sure that you have a project that's really implementable when we don't have funding identified early on. And at the end, come up with a schedule that has the potential for phasing over time, understanding that, again, not having funding identified early on means that there needs to be some flexibility there as well. Any other goals that we could add? Refinements to the goal? We tried to hit on some major topics and then get into a little bit more detail under those. But would love to get the committee's feedback and buy-in on these project goals as we're getting ready to launch this first round of community engagement.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned the budget a couple of times, and I'm wondering, do we even know what the budget is for this? I mean, what's your target in terms of budget? Is it too early to really get into?
At this point, no target has been identified, so we'll be working with city staff when we get to the needs, again, to identify some different options. And as I said, we're not gonna come up with options and then put budgets on them. We're developing options and presenting budgets at the same time. And so when we're looking at a variety of different options of meeting high needs, medium needs, and low needs, what are the early dollar figures or large rough order magnitudes of cost? So city staff can start responding to that and being like, you know, this is definitely not something that's even comprehensible or where we feel comfortable moving forward. And I know the city is doing a lot of this and a lot of number of projects, so they're going to be balancing that with all the other additional needs that the city is looking at as well. But yes, it's going to be a reiterative process. I'm sure this committee will be involved and updated as that moves forward, and we'll be reporting back some of those early options and budgets and where we're looking to provide some flexibility there.
Not to dig into it too much, but is there a generalized range though? I mean, if we're talking about, for example, removing what can be removed from this site and building a feasible library, community center, senior center, are we talking a minimum dollar range of X to Y, or is that not even feasible? I mean, you do these projects, you see the costs.
We have not gotten far enough, I don't think, in the process of identifying the needs to even start talking about square footages yet. As I said, we're just launching in and starting these early discussions with staff. I don't want to start throwing out numbers that might be alarming or confusing. So I think at an appropriate time, I think we can bring those back and start sharing that. We will be looking at comparable facilities and other locations of what standards are out there for library services and community recreation services. So when we bring back some recommended options, that it's looking at what your needs are, but also just kind of checking in on what other cities of similar size and what those kind of design standards are, so that you're not, you know, way out of alignment in that aspect as well. So we can bring those back and share that. But it's a little too early on to sort of give specifics yet.
Yeah, under number 2 for projects, the second bullet, when you talk about facility for the long term, does that, and it may have been in there, I may have missed it, does that include the idea, just given kind of the rate of change, not just of technology, but of the libraries and all of that, you could design a perfect library for 2028 or whenever it opens, and then by 2038 it could be, does that include then kind of the flexibility and adaptability into your recommendations?
Yes, we'll be looking at providing a building that has flexibility to adapt. So minimizing load-bearing walls so that walls can come out and be rearranged. We have done things like providing flexible power and data under the floor so that that can be easily rearranged and moved. So there's a number of different aspects that come into that, even from an operational standpoint. And so that will all be built in at a very high level when you talk about the cost for a facility like that, is to make those assumptions and build that in those early cost models.
Along the same lines, will there be demographic analysis in terms of what we look like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, in terms of especially the senior population, the family breakdown? Mm-hmm. Will that be sort of discussed?
Yeah, when we look at comparable cities, we look at your long-term future planning. So we'll go to your general plan and see what your build out and some of those projections are from populations. That's what Vicki will be diving into and looking at. And then we'll be looking at how this facility not compares to your population now, but future populations. Because as we said, we're going to design this facility for your long-term needs, and it would be remiss of us to sort of say we're just going to meet your current needs if you have a large projection in growth or change in demographics. Some of that is a little harder. That goes back to the question about making sure the facility is flexible and can adapt as your community changes, because you know you're going to build it to your community 2028, and then make sure the facility has opportunities to evolve as your demographics or makeup evolves over time as well. So yes, a good follow-up. Any other questions or suggestions to the goals, things that we might want to add or think about?
I'm not sure if you guys do this, but I think on in the budget sphere, like you have worked with other cities and libraries and understanding where funding sources, potential funding sources are. So I know part of the idea during master plan is so that we could actually go out to get grants.
Yes.
And so knowing where those pockets are to be looking at that from the library perspective and also because of the senior population when it comes to those community health enrollments.
Yeah.
So
We definitely, being involved in these projects, know of the different opportunities out there. There are more specific consultants that can look at your finances and talk about those different aspects of that. And if we hear of grants, we'll definitely share that, but we don't assist cities in applying for grants, but we do provide the master plans and the budgets that then they use to go seek those additional funding.
So I think to me, that'd probably be the most important is knowing that this master plan is ready to shop out.
Yes.
Above all else, right? To make sure. we can
Yes,
get
and so
get funding.
we understand what those requirements and needs are, and we'll definitely be providing that in that final report. And those would be, as we've been sort of describing this to staff and to the Friends of the Library before this is really the first step. You know, it's hard to go find funding when you don't know what you're funding for. So the first thing is to identify the needs, the project, and the budget or range of budgets that you're looking for. And then the next step would be then to go out and look for fundings, whether that's a bond, a grant, a sales tax, all of those different mechanisms. And that's not our specialty as architects, but there are advisors out there that can assist the city with that. And we have some recommendations that we've worked with if we need that.
I just want to make sure that just to
Oh, I'm sorry.
belabor the point, to make sure that the master plan, whatever product you give us at the end, is the kind of product that we can take to the grants. And
Yes.
this grant
Yes.
that's, yes, bonds for library tax, that's one thing, but it needs to be a product that we can go up and say, this is what we're looking for grant for.
Yeah.
So
But it's not gonna be drawings of the actual facility, it's
No.
just, it's a needs assessment.
It is, we will have a site plan. We will not have specific detailed drawings of the library or senior center. We will identify the overall square footage of that, but it is not what we would call like a conceptual design or schematic design, which at what point you would have more detailed floor plans with walls and doors and things like that. So this would be a high level site master plan that identifies where the building and site improvements are.
In your experience, is that without the detailed architectural plans, that's enough to go out and get funding?
It's enough to start identifying it. Each particular grant has varying degrees of requirements. And so it's hard to predict, like, would this plan fulfill any grant out there? That would be like, Vicki has worked in both sides of this. It's almost impossible to predict what a grant specific requirement will be. But it will definitely be the first place to start. And if you identify grants that need additional information, this would be the launching off point, at which point you can then take to the next step and get to that added level to meet those specific grant needs. Some grants ask for a very high level, some get a little bit more detailed. They are across the board. And so there's no one like template of everything you need for a grant is A, B, and C. So there's no specific recipe when it comes to looking for grants. They all ask for different ingredients.
So the next step after this is completed would be working on some of the conceptual designs.
Yes, and we can continue that as part of our services, or you can, yeah.
Okay.
But it's not part of your first
But it's
contract.
not part of this initial concept. The first initial concept is get this conceptual site plan identified, start identifying target numbers, and then as grants or funding opportunities, then you start moving on to the next phase, which is the design document phase, which is where we get into floor plans and what the building might look like and things like that.
In your item 5 on the schedule, you talk about phasing and like, it's hard for me to read it. It's understanding the, so interim service. So is the idea that maybe some services will remain on the site while other portions are being built out, or is this going to be moved off-site somewhere? Is this maybe
A
too
little
early?
too early,
Too
but
early,
we
yeah.
will look at options that may be able to be phased more easily than other options. When we get to the site options phase, we will start working with city staff and developing options. We will also at the same time develop a set of evaluation criteria, at which point we will start measuring the variety of options about renovating what you have. Maybe it's a renovation and an addition. What do we look about an option that might be new construction? And then we will evaluate what are the costs, upfront costs, capital costs, what are your ongoing operational costs on these very options, how it might be phased. Is this a phasable option? Some of them might not be, and that might be a key criteria of whether a specific option moves forward or not. And so as we move through this process, we will develop those criteria and work and share that information as it progresses through the project. So I think that's that task 3 when we get into those site options and criteria and trying to, again, come to a recommended site plan or plans.
Okay, so it's more than just entrance service as well.
Yeah, there could be options that some move and this gets renovated and they come back and then this comes. And there may be options where interim service delivery strategies are temporary facility. So there's lots of different ways to look at that, come up with those different strategies. All great questions. Any other? Yeah.
You mentioned, the word I heard, I liked it. It was respect for historic resources. You talked about that word. I was looking to see in the goals where that would fit in, this idea that a site plan would be mindful of those constraints and conditions on site.
Yeah, I don't think we have it as a full bullet point, but it is integrated into our first bullet point where we talk about integrating historical elements in outdoor spaces.
Okay.
We could emphasize that more, or maybe use the respectfully integrate historical elements too. So I think that might be, as I said, we could either bump it up to its as a 4th bullet point about giving the historical character and elements on the site a little bit more prominent. But we have given it at least a nod in here.
You're going to go into more detail following this about the community involvement, because that's one of the areas that we're most concerned about. Is, as I'm sure you've gotten an earful already, we have a very, how do we politely put it, engaged and active community that doesn't always get the message quickly.
Yes, we're going to talk about, I've lost myself on the agenda a while, but I think that's next. So once we've kind of reviewed and got confirmation of these project goals, then we're going to jump into the community engagement and participation. Really the meat of it. But I want to make sure that we have all the goals identified.
I also wanted to share what Jean said. I had to dig around to find the
Okay.
historical element.
So maybe we need to.
Especially if this is going on a public website and people are going to have access to it, people don't read well. We all know that. So maybe just having it front and center, because people might be very worried that our beautiful building's going to go somewhere. So I had the same thought, so I just thought it was worth.
I think it's good. Yes, I think this is why we bring it to committees like that, like you all, so you can look at it in the lens of what your constituents might look at it. And if we're seeing things that you're seeing things that we're missing, then we need to revise that and make sure it's very clear. We don't want anyone to make the assumption that we're not integrating those historical elements.
Well, then I have a question though that historical, you guys know, like the botanist will look at if there's historical trees, but what's the life of a tree? Like if a historical tree life is coming to the end, what do you do?
We won't get into that detail. Page and Terminal is going to, as I said, look at the entire site, including the landscape and paving around it. They will identify those historical characteristics in the landscaping. But we don't have an arborist that's gonna look at the health and wellness of a tree. I know the city probably has that capacity. And if the tree gets to a point where it's not contributing, there's a different route that it goes on.
I think her
So
main question she's asking is how old is it? How old is
The
the
more,
tree and how much?
yeah, the more.
I-
big-
we haven't, yeah, we're
it's a huge
still,
footprint.
yeah, we
Yeah, it's a
haven't,
huge footprint, but if you touch it and it's not gonna die, I will personally.
Yeah.
Like, no, but there are a lot of people.
yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, yeah, so that's the lifespan, it's not any trees, that one tree.
Oh, it's very, they're looking into that now, and when they complete their assessment, we'll present that back to you, and that will have a more in-depth, timeline of the site.
And we can check
Google
with the
says
city
200 years.
arborist, you know, we can, these
guys
guys
know how
don't
old
do
it is
that, but
first,
we
yes.
can talk to
I think it's
the
120.
arborist.
Oh, okay.
That's what they said when they did their historical award.
So word on the street is it's around 120 years old currently, and word on Google is that it should have a lifespan of at least 200 years.
And as Sheila said, if we touch that tree, the city will not let us do anything.
I will tell you a lot.
not a
of-
joke,
A
it's
lot of
serious.
things. So I, I live a block away from here, so I walk this street every
Yes.
single day. And that is more used than any playground equipment in the city. So that's what people would be upset about. And there's a lot of emotional connections to it. Yeah. My kids are no longer playing on it, so that's not it for me, but I know that people will be very upset. But I think you can consider it as a modular piece that, when that tree goes one day. Makes sense.
Like tables out of it and sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're well of the folklore of the tree and its beloved nature of it. So John has already told me about it. My daughter fell out of a tree and broke her arm, so we also love trees in my family. And climbing. Okay, well, I want to keep things moving, so I know we're anxious to talk about the project participation and the community engagement, so let's jump into it. So first and foremost, what we're working with staff is working on a flyer and a bookmark. This is just the starting elements that we need. We're going to use these flyers and the bookmark to launch a number of different avenues at which we're going to promote the community engagement. And so this is the draft that we have today, and we'd love to review and get your feedback on. The idea is that it entices community members to either two ways to engage the project. One is, I can make this a little up. It sometimes wants to just zoom right in and sometimes it does not. Two ways to provide input in round one. First is to jump straight to an online survey. The survey would be hosted on, we typically use Survey Hero. That's the platform that we have used. If the city has a preference for a different one, we're happy to use that, but that's the one that we've used the most. It will have the option to be in multiple languages. So we're definitely going to be providing that in, I think, English plus 3 more languages. And it will have opportunities to provide a little bit about information about their use of the building, how they use it, how they get to the site, and information on the first round of engagement, which is about needs. We also are looking to identify additional in-person events. This just shows a placeholder for 3, but we're actually tossing around potentially up to 5 different in-person events that the community can also come in person and share their ideas. And so this is where we have the flyer, and then the bookmark obviously is very similar. And again, the back of it will have some multiple languages where it says share your ideas and help shape the vision. We're looking at putting that in multiple languages as well.
Yeah, I'd like the marketing people in the room to sort of comment on this.
Before we even get there, you got to add senior center to the flyer. That's not even a question. That's just people will lose their minds.
Okay.
I think it's probably one thing to understand.
Yeah. So I mean, I have a few suggestions and things like that. I kind of feel like I don't I've been where you sit, and the worst thing is to try and edit something in a group sitting like here. So I'm just wondering, I'll maybe leave it to you and to Kathy and others, kind of what, is there a way without holding it up? I'm happy to kind of share some things, but I kind of don't want to belabor it or get into the nitty gritty.
So I think probably trying to say is the visually, it needs help.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there's a whole bunch of things.
Is
like
everybody
that.
agree with that?
But-
Yes,
but-
yes, yes,
It
100%.
looks like a bad.
I'm more in person.
Yeah,
right?
no, yeah, but that can start,
Exactly.
it'll just get kind of
So,
wonky
yeah,
and.
visually we just need something that's much cleaner, much more branded. It's
Yeah.
out there, so you don't have to have all the images. It looks like a house sale flyer.
Trust me, you don't want to see, the group doesn't want to
Yes.
see me like that, but I'll happy to be that way with you.
I think
If that-
it needs,
if that's
it
okay.
needs some substantial revision,
Yeah,
and I would defer to Rich.
I mean, Rich, would you be willing to help?
I would, again, I want to be careful. I don't want to, usurp any of the group's,
Well, this is your
input and all of that.
expertise.
So happy to-
Yeah, that's great.
Go, Rich.
Do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
This is-
I think
this is
we all-
your area
we all
of
trust you,
expertise.
Rich.
And-
Okay.
And also all of our input over the past several meetings, so you know all the different pieces of the puzzle, so.
So we'll connect.
I don't know who to blame.
Or maybe there's a
We
way
know
to
where
sit,
you live.
maybe there's a way to have everybody, again, without bogging it down, just want to be careful. Maybe there's a way to send it, and then if people have if there's just some horrible thing that we missed, you can let us know, because I'd hate to not have everybody at least take one look.
I think just the big thing for me is, I mean, this is the beginning of the branding of this venture. We need to start out with something that we're gonna carry all the way through, and there's, to me, there's something missing, and I'll let you figure it out.
There is one thing, and again, I don't want to hijack your presentation. This is probably something for another time, but I do, even in looking at the name, and people have called it different. There's been a few different things that's been referred to by different people in on the committee, and I do think it's worth up front, kind of to what Tom says, to think about that, because it's a mouthful, and there's kind of different ways of getting through that. I'm sure you've seen this in other communities.
Yeah.
So again, whenever is the appropriate time for a discussion, it's probably not tonight. I think we should do that and settle on kind of a naming hierarchy. There's a whole way you do it, as you
Yes.
know, that would make it really memorable for people.
Yeah, and the colors on this, I think you'll do something.
But yes, to follow up with that comment, I think we had started this conversation, what was it, like 2 meetings ago, about having a pithy name that evokes the image, so that as soon as you see the flyer, when, we can talk about the words hub or campus, or, village center, some of those terms, but that just as soon as you see those terms, that creates a vision, that would spark people's imagination in returning some of those comments that you're hoping to elicit, versus just having this 6-word summary.
Yeah, and I think we all know the entrance to the senior center is just like the black hole of
Yes.
doom. And so having that there, just imagine, it's like, oh no, I don't, you want something like
Fresh.
inspiring and hopeful and fresh and not look, yeah.
Yeah, so if the words are like imagine, right, it's imagine and vision, then seeing what currently exists is usually not the best way to.
100% agree.
Yeah.
It's probably, I wouldn't want to see any of these images. We're looking for something new and not.
Yeah, and I would say many
Very
times
busy.
we go the direction of not showing any architecture or any building, but just showing images of community members or the demographics that we're trying to reach.
Yeah,
So
that
we've
could
all
be
put on
better.
these flyers with no buildings, with just faces of people and community members.
Seniors, children.
Rich is gonna give you some
Rich
really
is
good
gonna do it.
ideas.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think if you have the spaces, then nobody knows it's a library. I don't know, there's.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
defer 100%.
Yeah, I'm not a designer myself.
Agree
I'll
on that.
have to give you some.
Change They'll get people around that.
Yeah, they'll come to the meeting.
Yep.
This is not, I think for our community, this is not going to excite people, right? Does everybody agree with? Yeah, we
Yeah.
need something a little
Definitely.
punchy or a little.
Punchy, yes.
Well, I think it's nice if we can have a point person, and then, you would then give a single voice. So again, I think designing a flyer with 14 people is gonna be a bit laborious.
Is the
for everyone.
designer-
Yeah.
Wait, is the designer on your staff?
Oh, we don't have a marketing staff member, so we generally rely on,
Okay.
the city's marketing, or if you gonna spearhead that, we provide a starting and launching off point,
I can't.
and we work with, the resources that we have, but we're not a marketing.
Okay, because I
Committee.
think
Yeah,
there's
we're
some
architecture.
confusion. I think there's some confusion. I think
Okay.
It had been said that you guys had part of your
Yes, we're,
package was
yes.
marketing.
yes, we provide marketing materials. We don't know the brand. I'm sorry, I haven't, if there is a vision or a brand or, that has been started, I think it would be great to build upon that. I think we were working off, these colors just came from like the city
Yeah.
website and the city's brand. And so that's kind of where we started, and looked at a couple examples, but it sounds like we would love to,
Who's the designer in the city? We've got to have graphic designers.
The one for the
You
golf
have
and the
anyone
parks or.
collected?
Beth, I'm sorry.
Anyone collected as a.
So I think this is a useful point for us to know, because I think many of us had been under the understanding that your firm, when you say that you provided
Yeah,
marketing
that's
materials, I
right.
think we had assumed that that meant that you would help deliver the marketing vision. But it sounds like your expectation was for the city to provide the design vision.
well, I
And
think
you'll do the
the
marketing.
intent
Yeah.
is that we would work with the city to develop it together. I mean, we are,
Okay.
we weren't gonna come in and brand, the project, the services that we were, providing or working with you all to develop the marketing graphics. So yes, we are definitely going to develop them, but we're not gonna develop them without working with you all. And so we started this process with city staff, and we've been working with them to get us to this point. And now we're looking to engage this committee and get your feedback and input on taking it to,
This is critical, because this is what's gonna go to the community.
Mhm.
And if this starts it and it's a dud,
Yeah.
it'll set the tone for a dud project.
Mayor, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
While we're all in here, because I think the one thing we do have consensus on is that we need to name this project. Do we have some ideas that we can share tonight so that that is a starting point for us?
We did that 2 meetings ago.
Okay.
Yeah, we already have that list and these guys have that list
sorry.
of language that.
But-
we-
So
But I
they
think it's a
decide
good
outside.
point, Dom. I
But I
think that
think-
we need sort of.
We
put
never
that
reached a final
together.
decision.
Yeah.
We
Oh.
had a list.
We had a list.
So
Yeah.
can we reach a final decision tonight? I mean, like that,
If
it's hard to do the material without reaching a decision.
Well, time is getting kind of
Yes.
critical.
I think we're still trying to get through their logistical.
Okay.
I think, but
Itinerary.
you could come up, you could look at that list probably and come up with your
Yeah, well,
communication.
again, what I'd like to do, because I want to be careful, because I'm happy to draft a few things up, kind of think it through, and then, have everybody take a look at it and say, so I don't want to,
Yeah, I
go
got
off on
you.
my
I
own.
got
So
you.
why don't we put a pin on this and we'll come back. We'll get
I'm happy to
into
do
this, and then we'll talk
And
about it.
we need to identify a graphic designer.
yeah,
Yeah.
there is.
Okay, and we need to identify. That, and it's critical, in my opinion.
so, whatever we wind up doing, the image on the left, one of the things that we will be working with is, did I skip over? So when we do our community outreach, you can see on the pop-up on the left, these large boards, you see them in the middle, and on the right. So we use these large scale, graphic, boards to collect information in the in-person, meetings. And so these are what we're calling our engagement boards. Again, we want to present, the flyer, however that, manifests itself and gets finalized, but again, so that people know, oh, I saw this flyer, this is the flyer again, this is the place to come to provide information and engage this project. We're then going to start with these boards with a little bit of the project background, the schedule, and the site, so they understand, again, that we're working within the constraints of the site. Some of the things that we were looking to ask were, how do you use this facility? How do you use the outdoor spaces? How do you use the library? How do you get to this facility? Just understanding Are they biking? Are they walking? Are they driving? Where are the majority of our users coming from? And how do they access it? And so we are looking to provide a little bit of understanding of them and how they use it. And then we're going to ask, related to this idea of engaging the community on needs, is what are their priorities in a variety of different aspects. So the first one would be, what are your priorities when we talk about library services and programs? And so here we have 9 different library services and programs that then they would be able to prioritize.
Can you blow that up?
Yes.
So we can focus on just one side at a time? Please.
So zooming sometimes works better than. And so what are your priorities for library services and programs? And so we'll have, right now we have identified 8 with, an open-ended one. So things, books for, what are your main priorities when you come to the library? Is it for books, content creation studios? Are you coming here for group study and collaborating? Are you coming here for children's programming? Are you interested in maker and art classrooms and events, conference spaces, multi-purpose classrooms? Are you here just to hang out and socialize, or any other programs and services that you might be coming here for the library for?
So quick question about these categories. So is the expectation if somebody's filling out this form to just put an X, like, yes, I'm using it for children's programming, or to use that empty space to free text in the characteristics that they would like to see within a children's programming space?
We're asking them to essentially vote. So
Okay,
we
so
do the
just an X.
in-person, we hand out these little
Dots.
stickers
Dots.
and dots, and they can sort of, okay, here's,
Shred
you get,
style.
here's 4 dots or
Yes.
5 dots, and put them on the top 4 priorities of programs and services from a library component. And then we will go into senior programs, early childhood programs, recreation programs, and site elements. And so basically they will be able to prioritize these different elements across different services. And it's an easy way. The write-in just gets complicated. It's hard for us to analyze the data and to make it equal to like an online survey or in-person survey. So on the online, again, they will just be selecting up to 3 or 4 images or words, however we decide to end that.
So this is a guided exercise then, so.
It can be self-guided or it can be guided through city staff. So we've done these exercises so that these large boards or posters are just in the library and somebody could come up to them, they read the question, and then they have the dots are available and they can place their dots on the items that they would really prioritize. Otherwise, we can also, the same type of boards can be used in an in-person engagement facilitated by library staff or community services staff, or any of you all, any ambassador or stakeholder of the project that's been, up to speed. We don't want somebody who doesn't know anything about the project, but somebody who's been heavily involved can also guide somebody through this. And so then they can sort of walk them through, explain the project, and help facilitate.
Go back to the top. Is this finalized or?
No, this is our first draft as well.
Okay.
So we're sharing it with you all again to gather input and feedback so that we can get this launched.
So you've done many libraries around the state and around the country. I'm presuming that the 8 that you picked are the most commonly.
We had a suite and we worked with, library staff to identify what would be some of the best fits. There were other things that we have asked other communities and library staff felt like it just wasn't a right fit for this community or operationally wouldn't be something sustainable. So we definitely don't want to put anything on the list that we can't deliver, right?
And I think that we did provide some feedback that I don't think is in here yet.
Yeah,
So
we're still working.
we're not doing a content creation studio. That's not gonna, maybe if people want it, we'll find out, but we have some other things that are higher priorities that we think should take up these spots. So,
Like technology, computers.
Yeah,
like
sort of.
creating-
yeah, the
Internet.
technology memory lab piece, the library of things piece, which keeps coming up, kind of the sustainability piece. So, and off the top of my head, I can't remember, but there's still changes to be made.
Okay.
So that it does start with, these fundamental core programs that
Like books. and-
Yeah, the books that libraries do have, but
Children's
again,
program.
you know, every community
Means
is
books and
different. So
library.
in one community, one of these things might be really important, but in our experience, maybe there's something else that should be at this level.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, when you're a lawyer, you have leading questions, right? And you have questions. I mean, it's almost like we've decided these are the things, and then people are gonna vote on which one they like best. I feel like when ideas? And I think that's what we're getting at, right? Like,
Yes.
when do people are gonna just say like, hey, what about this?
Yeah, there will be an opportunity at the end to share other ideas, and they'll be able to write those in. Here it just says other ideas, but in the online survey, you'll be able to click other ideas and input any idea that you would like. And then we'll be able to capture that. And if we see somebody's inputting the same idea, we can then, that will obviously float itself to the top.
Yeah. I feel
When
like
we
it's
do a
already been
full-
decided, though. I feel like this is what we've decided. I don't know. It feels a little, if I were just coming into this new cold, I'd feel like, oh, you've already decided what you want, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
And Rich, do you feel
The choices, I mean, I understand the process, but the choices themselves feel pretty specific
Yeah.
for where we are in the project.
And we can add more
And
choices.
so I think
Yeah.
what people are saying, again, is the idea of choices is good, but
Yeah.
maybe it's a little more broad,
Open-ended.
broader, open-ended type of categories rather than specific, arts classroom.
And I think, as Kathy said, there's some things that are missing from here that we need to add, so we can increase the number if we wanted to add.
I think
More
what we're
options.
saying, yeah, but I think what we're saying is maybe that these are the wrong ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like, books for all ages, well, yes, it's a library. Like, maybe it's
But you're
more like.
asking people to prioritize though, right?
But-
But,
No?
no,
Yeah,
I
Because we can't do everything.
I understand that, but like, maybe it's media, or it's,
Well, one thing that's.
how do you
can't-
want to do you want more electronics? Do you want books? Do you want, I mean, I
But
think
that's what, I think that's like, so someone would say, IT or books or, right? Like-
But whatever you're gonna put down there, people will gravitate towards what you have and not gonna go into the other, I mean, there's gonna be, I mean, we're all a certain age, yeah. I bet you if you ask young children that have completely different ideas how the library should be used, that we can't even imagine.
Visual champion and slide.
And then.
What's wrong with that?
Maybe instead of this, like
Do it.
specific name of what it is, like, this feels kind of like what the room label would be on the outside of the room. And maybe it's more just, instead of using that type of wording, using wording about kind of the general sort of thing that would go on there.
Sure.
To give a feeling of flexibility, because some of it can almost feel a little bit jargony if you're not in the field.
That's a fair criticism. So we can work on, I do want to go back to, if we want to be able to sort of analyze or look at this data, we can't have it all 100%, just write in any idea you want, because the sheer number of people that we hope to engage this in the thousands, and if everybody's writing something different and what they mean by this and that, it's just not going to be something that we can analyze. So we do this selection of choices. Agree, we need to find the right choices for you and your community. But I hope we can all agree that it's definitely got to be a list of things that people are checking, and it can't be an open-ended question. If you would like us to then analyze the information that we're getting, because we got to be able to then quantify and say, like, what's important to your community is technology, or is children's programming, or is this idea of creating and making, or book. And that way, when we come back to a program of spaces or rooms, we can then talk about why we've created this list of rooms and spaces.
That's fantastic, and I agree with you 100% that there's no way you could do your job if it's just, what do you want?
Yeah.
But I would urge that perhaps you have, on the other side, you have 16 instead of 9. So maybe we
Yes.
bump
as I
it
said,
up.
We can
And,
add,
and I'm hoping that one of those is performance space, because we specifically have a bequest that
Okay.
must be used for a performance space.
That's there, it's under the community services and recreation piece,
Ah.
because remember, we're trying to share spaces.
Sure, I get that.
it's on the next.
Yeah,
I just don't want to run afoul of the bequest by it not being considered part of the library.
Yes, and when I first reviewed these, I was like, oh, you need to put in performance space, but it's in there. It's just in a different section.
It's under,
Yeah, just, again, we have a very, very specifically worded request that says the library will have a children's amphitheater. So if it's not under library, I don't want the Heart and Lung Association to come and say, you don't get that, we get it now.
I'm also okay to not talk about them in categories of library or
No,
recreation.
I love that. I love that idea.
Okay.
I just,
That actually needs to be added to the part. Yeah, right, because if you have a $2.7 million project,
Yeah.
that needs to make sure that you've got that in there, period.
because we're gonna share the
Regardless
space.
of the voting, if that money is going to be used towards this, then it needs to be in there, otherwise we say that's not, if we decide that people don't want it, then.
I would just say that the early childhood programming piece, I mean, yes, it's a story time amphitheater, which we obviously, there's some flexibility about how we define that. But what we're really asking people is, are you interested in children's services and programs in early childhood? And then one manifestation of that is this space. So I don't know.
That's not how major giving works though. So, I mean, I think if someone is providing $2.7 million and then you interpret it a different way, that's not the way the donor feels about it.
I'm just talking about moving, wherever you have performance space, just put that as one of the choices under library, and I think that solves the issue.
Well, so, I mean, so going back to our discussion about renaming this whole project, right? Right now, it's categorized specifically as library, senior, and recreation. And to your point, because performance space is placed under recreation instead of specifically placed under library, it would, it would disqualify us from this. Potentially from this request. So part of the question is, rather than having them pre-categorized into specific library space, senior space, recreation space, could we, since the idea is that we are sharing these spaces, right? Is there a way we could facilitate that naming across the board so that we perhaps there are more library focused programs? I don't know,
My concern.
But I think in this stage, it makes sense to have it separated.
Yeah.
We're just asking people to prioritize. It's not the final thing, because I would say to the senior section, because I speak to that, like it should be fitness. I would say instead of fitness and wellness, it should be fitness classes.
Yeah.
There should be a health and wellness section. There should be something about learning and technology are separate because there'll be lectures. And then hanging out would be nice to see there. So, because I think some seniors may look at, they may look at their section in the same way, like I use a library, I'm just gonna look at that. I may not look at
The whole
thing. Right?
That's why I'm wondering, instead of categorizing by library, senior, and recreation, we think about it in terms of function, right? So if we look at like classroom spaces, right? And then we're saying under classroom spaces, we would like dedicated IT spaces. We would like, like space for fitness classes, right? So we categorize them more by function rather than by our preconceived notions of what is a library activity versus a senior activity.
I agree. I think we shouldn't just focus on that. Like we talked about this before. It may not be here's the library, here's the senior center.
Yes.
It may be all combined somehow into one program. So I agree. Maybe these functions still remain the same, or we make them change them slightly, but they're all under one big umbrella. This is, and it goes back to what we're calling.
Here's a concern that I think we need to be cognizant of. One, just like you said about if you just have a what do you want, it'll get too broad.
No.
I hear you. Let me just put it all out there. If we say, here's 25 things, which of them do you want? People's minds will blow. And on top of that, we have stakeholders who are going to be wanting to know that their concern is met. So at this first stage, we're putting together a library, recreation and community center, and senior center into one new campus. And I think the word campus has to be involved. I like library park campus because then you get library and campus and park all together. But having them separated at this initial stage. Let's each stakeholder know that their needs are being met. In the umbrella instruction, we can, in a very few words, articulate that we're proposing to create a new center that will include these services that have been previously provided by separate facilities, that will be sharing them. So when you're picking what you're interested in, realize that it may not be just the library function. It'll have community center function, senior center function. Because again, the great example, the senior center has a kitchen. We've been asked for a teaching kitchen for the library. When the senior center kitchen isn't being used, it's the library teaching kitchen. They're the same thing. So in the next iteration, we go, here's the things that people liked the most. Now let's winnow down. Then we can just put it all in one umbrella. But right now, we've got to articulate for stakeholders that they're not getting short shrift.
But I mean, I imagine that library staff, senior staff, they're already determined, and their expertise is probably, it's very valuable to what some of the core program elements should be and need to be for this to function. Then we overlay kind of the community's ideas, which, but we need to put rails on it. We can't just rely on the community. Oh, they want to have a slide, so we're going to give them a slide because we got 5 votes for a slide. So
well, right, but again, people are. I want to say people are stupid, but people can be kind of stupid. If they look at something and they don't see their name there, they're going to go, "This isn't for me." So if we don't have a senior center area and a library area and a recreation area, then I think some people are going to lose them right away.
Maybe we guide them by giving them some of the main. I mean, we know we're going to have books. We know we're going to have a
We have done that
space.
as well. We've
So there's
said
this,
these are
the core program is already
elements.
kind of predefined, but
Give
then
it.
all these additional
Yeah.
pieces that could be.
supplemental or enhanced,
Yeah.
sometimes we call them. So we have done this exact same thing. We've had this, every community that we bring them to has a different way of looking at it, because every community is different and their needs are different. So we have definitely done that. We've said, these are definitely givens. These are core programs and services that we are not going to stop providing. Books, technology, whatever that might be now and in the future, because that's, as we know, it's going to evolve. And then we talk like social and lounge spaces, that's going to be provided for all ages. And then we can talk about what might be enhancements or supplemental. I will just say the reason why sometimes we come back to this is that some people want to understand how these enhanced services compare to some of the core services, and if there's any change in the community about whether their library should still be all about books or other type of new and enhanced services. So I'm just going to put that out there. That's why sometimes we put books in there, because some communities are feeling like books for libraries are great, but libraries should go beyond books and they should start providing more additional amenities. And so in order for us to, if you would like to start that conversation, we then have to have how the information or love of books and libraries is related to all of these others. So just keep that in the back of your head about when you start saying there's givens, because then you're eliminating some choices or somebody's opportunity to vote for a choice or not vote for a choice that they don't feel is a core program. So that's just the devil's advocate of that conversation.
Kind of based on what everybody's saying and also what has been said in some of the previous meetings, I just kind of want to throw something out and get a reality check. What it's sounding like is there's an overarching thing. Let's just say for the moment, let's call it the community center. You can argue whether that's the right one. In the community center, there's the library, there's senior center, there's community spaces, et cetera. Like that, is that kind of the naming architecture that reflects kind of what you've been thinking and what the community is looking for? And then because people will say some people still say I'm going to the library, but they're also going to refer to this overall place as something.
Yeah.
And given that we don't want to have these walls like we've had just out of necessity in history, where that's the senior center, no, that's the library. We really want it to be seen as we need to have some name for the whole place.
Yes.
how can I say something like the Knowledge and Arts Campus? Like the university I went to, we didn't call it the library, this huge building, we called it the Knowledge Center because it had so many other elements to it. And given that there's also like a performance space element in this as well, knowledge is a broad thing, cooking from reading to everything else. I mean, is that a strange name for people when they hear that?
But then you leave out the senior.
Well, I think
teen and-
we had decided earlier that we're gonna put a pin in honing down on the name, because
Yeah.
like to your point, I think we talked quite a bit, and there's that spreadsheet that had
Right.
all the ideas, right? I think we mentioned some of those. Knowledge is very valuable. I think it would help this rebranding for us to eventually choose a name. But to your point, in having these artificial walls perpetuated during this first outreach time, make it difficult, because I do see that in reclassifying these according to the old library senior community classifications, we have a lot of redundancy. So when you talk about having 9 needing 16, because technically, right, you would use the same IT room to teach the seniors that you would be using for the early childhood program, that you would be using for one of the the children's programming, right? And so it would seem redundant. Versus if we reclassify it functionally for them as part of the re-envisioning, right? We would classify it, for example, to the amphitheater, right? Specifically, we're talking about outdoor communal spaces, right?
That would be, that'd be an inside.
Or so inside, so like an inside communal space, right? Letting them know that you would be prioritizing an internal performance space that could be used for a reading program for the children, but could also be used for performance for the community, but could also be used for some type of didactic lecture for the senior. Then everybody would be able to look by function, right? So if I'm like, oh, I want an exercise class, then I would look towards the fitness athletic category function area. And then in that space, I would see, oh, like the children can have their movement, the early childhood education can have their movement, the seniors could have their Taibo, whatever. And then, but it's the same space that everybody.
But I think, isn't there importance in knowing that like seniors, let's say, really want fitness classes, as opposed to not knowing that, as opposed to like all the 20-year-olds want a fitness class. I mean, that could be a different thing than, you're kind of finding out who wants that and why, as opposed to, or like if your picture is for your fitness class and this is 20-somethings exercise, and seniors are gonna look at that and go, well, that's not my class.
I think that's what we're landing on. I think Dean's point is really important, because you don't want to be perceived as taking something away. But, Julia is really right. This technology center, which we all agree, it's important for the future, but it's different for seniors. They're looking at, how do I use my iPhone? How do I, log on and use my email? How do I navigate medical visit using my, insurances app, those kinds of things. Whereas a young person, you're learning about Python or whatever else is the programming language. But they're going to occur in the same place. So how do we communicate to the community that we're not taking anything away from any of you guys, but yet everything's going to be combined? And rest assured, this is great path forward.
Okay, I think this is all really good feedback. I think we can take what we're hearing and come back with a couple different options of how to still identify the specific user groups. But I think what I'm hearing is we don't want to at the same time say Performance Arts Center 3 times or Performance Center 3 times. So we have to be able to identify and make sure the specific users are being heard, but without being redundant.
Communal and specific.
Yeah.
So we have these are, again, to the point of, it's a library, we're gonna have books.
Yeah.
So I think it might be useful to have that given section. Like we're talking about a joint communal place, whatever the phraseology that Rich helps us hone in on, will include these things.
Yeah.
But like you said, the add-ons, what are the add-ons communally and specifically? I think that there should be a performance space that could be used by whatever group is using it. But as a senior, I think that there should also definitely be X. So maybe we can have some, again, stakeholder priorities to emphasize those. So there could be redundancy in that a little bit, that it's, family, team, senior groups, what are they looking for?
And, you know, I think I've seen in some of the presentations, there's like a Venn diagram that's
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
libraries, seniors, and in the middle is all of the shared stuff, like a theater space or performance space or the technology labs, or so maybe there's some way to.
Yeah.
Bring it like that.
And to Alexandria's point, I think also sometimes in things like this, using photos becomes in a sense kind of a fool's errand because, you know, well, this one has young kids, or this one shows this thing. So there may be other, obviously.
Some type of
budget-
icon.
We can use like their stock, you know, graphics you may want to consider using that don't make you have to choose, well, it's a 20-year-old exercising or it's an 80-year-old exercising. It just shows kind of a.
Yeah, and the photos are hard to see anyway. I think that's.
Well, it's gonna be a lot
It's gonna be
bigger.
on a
Yeah.
big board.
This is gonna be 10 times that size.
Yeah, but I think it does, to me, that's path. I mean, I think the whole point of this project is future, right? Like, so to bring in like, these are the way it is, it's gonna bog it down into sort of the path.
Is this what you guys have used in the past?
We've done a combination of different things in different communities,
So
so.
flat icons. is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Straight up
So
flat
like,
icons.
Yeah. Yeah, we can, it gets, we will, we have a suite of icons. We'll have to make sure we have an icon for every little thing, but yeah, there are some generic,
Is it
Graphic
the project
element.
just manual or is there an online version?
And Canva literally.
I mean, they said that there's a QR.
I'm sorry.
so it's
There's a public domain of icons.
Yes,
and there's,
yeah.
I mean, Canva.
Yeah, we're getting in the weeds a little bit right now.
Yeah.
There'll be an
Yeah.
there's like, sorry, there's a QR code with an online version of this too that people will be voting on.
Yes, yes, the
Doing
same
our bad
version will
flyer.
be online
Guys, you can work on
versus,
this too.
in person on the kiosk.
One small other point, you talked about on the online or digital versions, you can actually, and I know we don't want to go into the other ideas, but it sounds like you're still open to having a place where people are gonna.
We are always gonna have an
Okay.
other. We need to have an opportunity for somebody to write something in, so we're
Yeah.
definitely gonna always have, I mean, here we have it 3 times, but on the online survey, it's gonna be on a single location. We do wanna do that because somebody may wanna write in something that
It's brilliant.
is really important to them.
Infinity pool.
And we don't wanna discount that. But we do at the same time wanna make sure that of, the ones that we have provided, we can sort of talk about the priorities and needs, because ultimately we wanna
Sure.
use this data
Yeah.
to help build a program and a needs, for the hub or whatever we're gonna call it.
Yeah, so that's virtually, you could type it in. How about in person, what happens if
They're gonna write, they'll have markers and they'll be able to write in their ideas.
for the other ideas?
For the other,
So
they
that'd
can
be
just
one
write them in.
Place they're gonna be able to.
There's also gonna be a board at the end, it's not shown
Oh,
on the
yeah.
screen, that allows essentially
Like
like the all
free
free
thinking?
thinking.
Yeah, there
Okay.
is a, what are your thoughts board? I sort of have it, I'm sorry, hidden in the bottom right, because it's just like a
Oh, I
thing where
see.
you can just write in your thoughts or concerns.
Okay,
Online, we'll have the same thing, if you have any additional thoughts or concerns, but even in person, if somebody wants to sit there and
yeah,
really express something, we want to give them an opportunity to do that as well.
great, that was my question, with in-person often.
Yeah.
Just hearing all these great comments from everyone kind of makes me go back to the beginning and our struggles with trying to name this project. And I'm beginning to realize it's probably too early to name this project. Really, it's more about a re-envisioning what we have. And we don't know where this is gonna go. We may end up, you know, maybe doing a portion of this and something else will remain the same. So maybe we need to, and going back to the flyer, maybe it's about reimagining this site, the library and all this, and not try to focus on some kind of a name that's gonna catch.
Yes, I'm gonna bring you into reality that we want the project to move forward. You guys are ready to do outreach. If you are going to solidify a name, you're gonna have like a week. You know, if we wanna keep this schedule, we're gonna have to move quickly, otherwise we don't wanna, this flyer is, as you said, critical to launching the campaign. And if the name is gonna hold it up, I agree, you might wanna reevaluate whether that's your top priority now.
I think the message right now
Right.
should be in these flyers, just that we intend to reimagine. And I don't want to say library park because it's more than that, but whatever the site is.
So right now, in addition to following up on the potential renaming and graphic design of the flyer that we're drawing out, one of the major priorities is reassessing the categories that currently exist, because I understand that you have to have categories to be able to have some type of statistical significance, right? If you had 1,000 people all putting 1,000 different write-in votes, you will have no majority in anything.
No.
With the current redundancy, however, you may find some difficulty with having redundant spaces contesting for numbers. So I think one of the things we'd be interested in seeing would be what the final makeup of the categories would be, so that we might have an opportunity to add in something that we think is clearly missing, like a amphitheater. And so I'm just wondering what our timeline would be to get something like that from you, since it sounds like having this ready would be also an important timeline goal for me.
When is the launch? When is this?
So we're
go
gonna, is everyone ready to move on? I mean, I know we only have, this was all really good in discussions and input and feedback on where we are now and how to evolve and move these to better serve your needs. I think some of the things that we're starting to do is talk about these different opportunities of when we could launch the community engagement. We've been working with staff to identify different large-scale community events that might be in supplemental to the first community meeting. And so there's the spring extravaganza, the music festival and arts crawl.
When is the first community meeting?
We're thinking of potentially the April 10th for the
That's
first
on-
community meeting.
It's on this page.
Oh, that's on the next page. So in addition to this formal community meeting, we're looking at additional more community pop-up events where we're really going out to the community, not asking them to come to a community meeting or event, but really to go where they are to engage them. And so this first slide is those events that we would go out into the community and through a community booth or the city's booth, pop up these boards and gather input. These were identified as 3 key ideas. It's the farmers market, the music festival and arts crawl, and the extravaganza, as well as the community meeting.
I think 22 is that specific.
Yeah.
So we talked about last time, March 26th and 27th, so those are not happening, correct?
Well, we adjusted the timeline to add the time in to do the outreach.
Okay,
When
that's
the
fine.
project management team met today, we talked a lot about this idea that eventually you're gonna have this flyer, and the flyer has a QR code to the survey, so we want the survey to be live when you guys start.
Yeah.
But we were also concerned about having like a full month so we could hit the people who need. So we sort of are thinking that we could have all this material ready by like the middle of March, and then open the survey on the 17th, and then really start the outreach piece. The survey would then be said stay open until I think we said like June 1st, so it would be open for a very long time. So it would still give everyone the opportunity to go out to all of the different, community groups that have meetings over a period of time. So I think the last time we talked, we were like, okay, we're gonna do outreach the whole month of March, and that's kind of what some of the staff report items look like. But in thinking about it, we need enough time to produce these materials to the standard you guys want, right? So we need a couple of weeks, I think. So that's sort of what we were talking
I
about
think
today.
that's a better approach, Kathy, I think, than just trying to cram it all into March. I think we were feeling last meeting that we had a limited time.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna take March 26th and 27th off my calendar.
Yeah, those are off.
Okay, so I like that much better.
I think it will work a lot better.
Yeah, that's much better. I think the question is that I can't emphasize, at least my own personal opinion, I think it's a consensus here, how critical the visuals and kind of the information is gonna be this first launch, because I think we're either gonna get people excited, or they're gonna say, oh, it's the same old thing.
So we'll work with Rich, and we'll get some graphic design assistance, because we don't have that skill set.
But I'm confused, so your team doesn't do any of the graphics at all?
We are not
What do you guys show up with?
We
What-
show
what's the
up with
deliverable?
templates and we show up with a starting point and a launching out point, and then we work with the city, whether it's their graphics committee, a
Okay, so you
specific ad hoc committee.
deliverables on the day of the event, so is it the first community meeting? What do you bring with you? Or are you having the city produce everything?
No, we'll be,
Bring the boards.
we bring the engagement board that we're working on. We
Okay.
will have a presentation at the community meeting, because that's like a sit-down formal presentation. So we'll have a PowerPoint presentation where we walk them through the project and the goals, and we present added information. And then we will have all the boards that we're working on now. That is the same information that we have on the survey. The one thing we want to do is to make sure that if people are engaged, we have this multitude of engagement points, right? Online survey, pop-up events, and a community event, that they're getting similar content. They're not sort of feeling like, oh, I went to this, and I heard something different, or I did a different activity or saw a different graphic. So what we're doing now is developing the materials that we're going to be using in the PowerPoint, in the boards, and in the online survey, all at the similar kind of level, so that no matter which platform you're using, it's the same type of information.
We had also,
If I may, I'm sorry, so just piggyback off of that, these materials, once they're finalized, the team's gonna be able to use that to launch our visits to all of the commissions that have been discussed. And we have a list of communication suggestions to share with you tonight as to how we're gonna get it out to the community once we have that final product,
Their final product? Which final product?
the shared final product.
Okay. And part of the confusion, we just did a Parks Master Plan, and that team brought with them the whole package. And so that's been kind of the confusion I'm having,
Okay.
because they came in with a fully prepared product and with like, this is what the website and this is the graphics, and it's gonna walk through that piece, and then that's what I'm struggling here with, understanding who's doing what on the visuals, the graphic design and visual pieces.
Yeah, so we're not in charge of the city's website. That
Well,
was.
the
yeah.
Parks Master Plan, they handled the website piece. as
Yeah.
well. So,
For
Yeah.
the Parks Master Plan, the website was created by the consultant.
correct.
And they were contracted to do that, we didn't contract.
Right, so that's
As far as-
that's where the confusion.
Yeah.
And as far as the visuals, as far as the flyer for the Parks Master Plan, Melissa Snyder. So maybe
We will be
Rich
reworking.
Yeah.
can give us our ideas and maybe we can put something together.
Okay.
And so, can I ask a I'm sorry. Is this slide that you have up here, that's not in our packet we got, right?
Oh.
Is it, no, that's my question.
Oh,
Am I
okay.
missing it?
No, it
or
is
yeah.
not.
Okay,
I haven't either.
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so
the most recent version of that.
that's fine, that's fine. I just want to make sure
Okay,
I
I'm so-
understand. So we have the first meeting will be, this community meeting will be April 10th.
Yes,
But then you've got the pop-up, that's under community meetings.
yes, so
So
we
there'll
do
be one meeting.
one formal meeting and presentation.
And what time, is that like an all-day thing? So people can come in at all times of the day?
I think initially we're talking about, there's an open house component, so people can come in before the formal meeting starts and drop in for like an open house and.
How long
just-
will that be?
It'd be like afternoon and evening time.
We haven't formalized the time. I mean, we're just preparing this and we want to gather
I'm
your
not asking
feedback,
for
but yes.
specific times. I'm just
Okay.
looking for like, how do we make sure the whole community can come to some of these things? Yeah.
Mayor, do you have any ideas as to how you want that formulated?
Well, I know we talked last time.
We talked last time
We talked
about,
last
like we
time.
did with SP, where it was, there's an open house presentation, open house, same presentation a second time, so people who missed it the first time can be there. And that way they don't feel like, I've got to be there at 4 o'clock or I'm screwed.
Yeah.
Oh, I can come
Right.
at 6 too.
Yeah, we had talked about this in the
Yeah,
last
okay.
meeting because of our understanding that your group would, because of the significant effort it takes to be here, that we would maximize your presence for a full day and be able to hit all of our target community groups by ideally having a presentation and open house time for those morning people who are available, the later afternoon people who are available, and the evening people who are available, because those are very
Or at least
different,
2 of the 3.
because those are very different demographics.
And that's doable. I mean, I think,
It worked really well with a very controversial topic. And I think that it did help people to feel more comfortable and
yeah,
again, this is my own interpretation, that the city was listening because they gave an opportunity for people to be there, as opposed to, you got one shot, you miss it, you miss it.
Yeah, and we don't want that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we've always done an open house in a community. That's one of the reasons why we do the pop-ups. We really feel like, in all honesty, every city we work with and community that we work with, most of the feedback we get is from when we go to them in these pop-up events. When we do the community meetings and we do the open houses, we get a good amount of staff and community members to come in and to do that. But the greatest numbers that we get are when we go to them. So when we go to these farmers markets and other events, and we're not asking them to alter their schedule or come to us at a specific time. But I think we have the time. We're here. If we want to do the morning and the afternoon presentation, or morning open house with a presentation, and then we do the afternoon open house and another presentation, I think that's totally doable. If that's worked well, we definitely don't want to. We want to work with what you guys have had successful experience doing. So I think we can probably just model it after that, and then build that in, and then develop the time and information here to reflect that. And then in addition, do these right now, we're proposing these other events, and I'm sorry this isn't in there, but 412, the spring extravaganza, the music festival and arts crawl, and then we were looking at potentially a farmer's market in April and in May.
And just to clarify, these are like taking the kiosk boards out. We would also be doing, restoration concerts, story time, whatever, senior center, St. Patrick's lunch, and there's lots of other things going on. But we would just be doing like a verbal, want to let you know about this, here's the flyer, the materials. These are where we would really go and take the big setup.
Yeah.
That would be great. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. So the idea is on this flyer, right? We want to list these events, and we want to list events that are community-wide events. And while the senior luncheon is going to be a great event, and we're going to get a lot of great feedback from seniors, we don't want to put the senior luncheon on the flyer to go to the senior luncheon to provide input. So as Kathy said, there's lots of layers to this to try to maximize the importance of this and how important the feedback is at a variety of different levels.
So like ultimately we would have like the April stuff happening on April 10th, like a morning, an afternoon, whatever, and then those other little boxes would be these big things.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a little bit of a granular question about how these boards actually work. Can you go back to the picture that has one of the boards up? So your deliverable materials, we did one set of these boards that
The digital files, so you can print them out as many.
So that makes sense. So then for each one of these events, we'll print out a new board. That way each one will have its own set of stickers. And then with the stickers, you have some way to quantify.
We even, when we come back, we can look at just the data for the spring extravaganza, because we know that's going to be predominantly families and children. So we can say, well, what do the kids really want? Well, let's look at what we got from the Easter egg hunt. Okay, this is what we heard there. That, when we color code the information, we'll have we'll have multiple bars, and the data will be identified by its location. So the online survey will have the different events that we've done, and you'll be able to sort of see where information was. Like children's programming, you might see the majority of the votes came from extravaganza. So all of that, you'll be able to pull a little bit of that data apart. On the online survey, if we want, we can ask individuals to provide their age, not specifically, but in ranges. So then we can also pull the online survey and target what from the online survey did we hear that was from older adults, children, teens. We can categorize that as well. I'm sorry, somebody had their hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that we get this is not your first rodeo. We're trying to crawl inside your brains and understand everything that you've done for the last 25 years in an hour.
Yeah.
So please don't feel like you're being attacked. We're just all very,
No, this is
we're all
a
trying to
passionate project
find
for you. It's
as
important
much
for your
information.
community. And while we do this, every time we do it, it's different for every community. Every community has come in it with a different mindset, different previous experiences or studies or questions that have been asked, and they come in with a different thought or process to analyze it. And so I've been doing it for 25 years, so I have a pretty thick skin. You guys would take a lot for you to really cause me to not sleep well at night. But I think this is what makes this project will be richer and more enlivened because of this feedback. Is the starting point where you wanted it? No, but that was the starting point for another community, and they felt that that really represented their voice and what their needs. And we had to start somewhere. So we could have picked some different ones, maybe that had more bubbles and had a little bit of different graphic style. This is just where we landed, and that's why we brought it to you to get this community's feedback and really, incorporate that. And I think it's going to be very fruitful to work with a single point of contact. So I'm excited, Rich, that we are going to try to do this in a committee and that we can work, as Kathy said, if we really want to launch this by mid-March, we're going to have to get these graphics updated quickly. And we're going to help and work with you to do that. So it's definitely in our scope to gather this feedback, gather your input, come back with new layouts, and then present that to you and get, keep doing this and revisit this and get this fine-tuned to meet your needs. So, and then yours might be the new template. We start somewhere else and they'll say, that's horrible. And then I'll be like, oh, okay.
How come you don't have pictures of people?
Yeah, that's why buildings don't all look the same. That's why nothing looks the same in this world, because what everybody gets excited about or feels is appropriate for them is different. If we all like the same thing, then we'd all live in the same type of house. We'd all wear the same outfit. So that is the beauty of this world and the diversity that we love to engage.
Don't make me wear a red shirt.
What else did I miss, Kathy? It's been a long day, so I'm kind of like.
Well, round two, they may be wondering about the long timeline. I mean, I know we already looked at it, but
yeah,
what are in September? What are we doing? What's the second round?
So the second round of engagement will be once we've collected the needs and the priorities of those, is we will be developing a program. And when we say program, a list of spaces and square footages, and come back with site concepts and design values. And design values is just a fun way for people to start thinking about what the architecture might look like. It won't, as I've alluded to, we're in the end producing a site plan. We're not trying to show what this building might look like in any specific architectural style. But a design value is a fun way that people can start to express what they would like this facility to look like. And again, this is a launching off point. As we're working through this committee and with city staff, that doesn't feel like a priority and it's seen as a distraction from what the goal is. This is, again, just some different exercises that we've done in other communities for this type of work. So that might not be the right solution for you. It might be that we need to talk about other types of values or ideas. So that's something that we're happy to ideate on and talk about and figure out if that's the right way for you. But that's yeah, we got to get through this first hurdle first, and then we'll think about that. I don't know if I want to go too much even further in this presentation, because I think there's a lot of things that we're still working on and developing. And I think I'd like to keep us really focused on, at least in the next few weeks, to get the campaign, this round one, launched. And so I'm wondering, Kathy, well, if you keep looking, you'll see a lot of more things in there. If it's better just to stay focused on this, unless you guys would like me to sort of dive into some of the other things that we're working on. But to me, the value that you've been having right now is what we really need to keep the project moving forward.
Can you go to the agenda, like to see what other section we haven't covered?
Sure. So after this, we were going to just give you a sneak peek into what we're doing as a site assessment, as well as the needs assessment. But I know I think I don't know the timeframe, or is it open? Okay, I didn't want to impede on everyone's evening if everyone was
I mean,
expecting.
I guess I
to-
feel like I would like
I'm
to
with
make
you.
sure everyone has full understanding of what you prepared for this first meeting, right? This is sort of the meeting, so I don't know what you guys think, but it wouldn't take that long, right, to go through the rest of the slides?
Sure.
Yeah, just present.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
You're here,
Quickly.
so let's questions, we'll hold comments and questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry, happy to do that. So one of the other things that we're working on, in building is our site assessment. So again, these are all in progress, and we're still gleaning information from city staff and the information gathering, session that we're having. And so one of the things that we want to do as we are preparing eventually to do concepts for the site is to understand its transit, how the major train line or the major bus. The site boundary is identified in red here, where the bike paths and predominant walking paths to and from the site. So that's one of the things that we're analyzing. We also have solar orientation. So if we start talking about outdoor spaces and amphitheaters outside, making sure that we're aware of that as we're thinking about those outdoor programs and spaces and how they can be utilized year round. We're also looking into the planning documents and understanding the variety of different zones around the site. And you can see here starting to identify the potential historical landscape elements like the fig tree and the cedar tree that exist. Eventually we'll identify any other site components as Page & Turnbull is doing their assessment of the site. We're also looking at neighboring facilities and uses. And so we have the farmers market. We know it's not the senior living, dedicated senior living, but now multi-use or multi-generational living component adjacent to us, as well as other neighboring facilities like parks, Orange Grove, and things like that. So just making sure we have a clear understanding of those facilities. Again, these aren't complete. These are just all in process and what we're working on currently. Eventually, we will go into site opportunities. So this is just an example of kind of what those concepts might look like at a very high level. Again, just to sort of get your idea about what might come as a deliverable as we move through this process.
I know we promised not to
Yeah.
comment, but I asked this before, I never got an answer. What are our current footprints? What's the library footprint? What's the senior center footprint in terms of square footage? Do we know that?
We have got their, we have the floor plans from city staff. We just did the tour today, and so we were just kind of making sure we have every space identified, the drawings we had. Yeah, so
we'll have that next week.
Okay,
So
I
we'll have
was
that,
just curious
yes.
if we're A, B, or C, or not, none of the above.
I think I know the senior center is around 7,000, like 6,700 square feet.
I figured we're probably close to A.
The library is like 24,500, including the.
So option A is yes, closer to where you are now, and then it's building as it moves to the right. I'm sorry, if you would have asked that compared to these, I would have been able to answer that. I thought you wanted specific.
No, I meant.
We will be doing that. We are, when we build the program, we are analyzing the existing square footage and its use now, because inevitably we will know, people will ask, oh, you're proposing a community room. How big is it compared to what we have now? Or how big is the library space compared to what we have now? How many books will we have in the future compared to now? So we're collecting all of that existing data now in preparation for that next phase of when we get to the list of spaces and square footages, that we will have those answers. For the most part, we start talking about it as a capacity, like a classroom that holds 30 people. Because if I tell you it's a 1,200 square foot classroom, a lot of people have no idea how big that is, unless they can reference something or think about how many people in the room.
I love the how many people in the room.
So
That'll
Yeah, we generally talk about program elements, when we go out to the community about their capacity. Oh, this is a classroom that seats 20 people, or a conference room that sits 14, or group study room for 4, not a 400 square foot room.
Sure.
Because that's just, again, jargon. We try to keep the jargon out. It creeps in, but we try to keep it at bay. So again, we're going to develop some concepts. As I said, we want to take those concepts and develop a criteria that is a success criteria. And then we will weigh those concepts about where they're really hitting those criteria and where they might be missing. And right now we just always kind of default to the red, green stoplight. So that you can see green is good and red are some flags there. So once we have these concepts, we'll work with you to develop their criteria to then rate these concepts. And that's just a great tool to provide some transparency in why a certain option might be a recommended option versus another one. So this is a great way to sort of analyze those different ideas.
Can I also ask the site analysis question? As a part of that, are we also looking at, say, broadband connectivity, what kind of conduit's already in this site area in case as we're looking at greater technological needs? Like, I don't know how adequate right now those broadband services are, or even just like, if you're looking at putting in EV chargers, if there's enough conduit in the street and power to put something like that in. Is that at all part of the site assessment of like what's actually in the public right of way and then leading into the building?
We don't have like a civil engineer or any type of utility diagram,
Okay.
but if in talking with staff, if we hear of any concerns or know of any issues, then we will then definitely.
Even just doing a basic like upload download speed broadband assessment is really helpful, especially considering that, the CPUC had just gone through a lot of funding for broadband analysis, and now they're looking at moving into implementation. So we know that funding is currently there, although at the federal level, it just was discontinued under this administration, but still something to consider if we're looking at a modern facility.
Yeah.
What about parking? Are you looking at parking now?
Oh, we're starting. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're asking in this first round, like, how do you access the facility or how do you get here to sort of understand that? It's going to be part of this conversation, and we'll have to talk about how we're going to resolve or answer that. So that will be a good, important discussion as we get into the different site options. And I know, and I'm sure we'll talk about underground parking or other types of parking elements, and could probably cost them out and indicate what it would take to do an underground parking garage and the costs associated with that. I would imagine that was going to come out in this. We'll likely, what we do in these types of scenarios is keep that as like an enhancement or an add-on. So because of its cost and in some people's minds, question of it as autonomous vehicles and all sorts of other things come into the world that we live in. So it's a big thing that we will have, again, a technical meeting with planning and talk about what their planning standards are and what the requirements might be on this project from their point of view.
I know these are examples, I think, but I noticed in them, the senior center is always on the second floor. I know we have a limited footprint here because we have the tree and it's a small lot. Have you seen in other library community centers, have you seen senior centers on second floors a lot?
Yeah, we just did one on our Burlingame Community Senior Center. Yeah. So it's a community center, but it has a senior active lounge on the second floor, and their main program space dedicated to senior programs is on the second floor.
I did notice that all the concepts are 2 stories, and have you ruled out doing a single story? Or is this?
These were very early concepts. We did an interview
Yeah.
stage, so we were not going to throw anything out there that would be potentially controversial. And knowing the footprint of the tree, and the amount of just use of the open space.
No.
That is. I mean, it's already a
question about it,
2-story facility, so we just assumed we would sort of maintain that.
But sometimes you have to go down one path just everyone understands.
And we
not enough.
can do that. We do those site evaluation, like we just showed the 3 there, but we have done that with 4 or 6. And we've shown the 1 story, and then we've showed people how you basically lose the park.
Yeah.
And the tree, and all the open space, and it's all red, and there, it's gone, and maybe the 3-story option is over here, and that's also gone, because from an operational standpoint, like, to staff 3 floors is a big ask from.
You know, like, looking at the map, my assumption was that the second, I mean, I thought about that too, but
Yeah.
it looks like the entrance, you can't enter the second floor from the one, like, it's gonna be a level where you can just go into the second floor, right?
Well, right now, the library is on one entrance and the community center. Yes.
Right, so
we
you can come
already
in,
have this.
right, so it's
2
it's sort of
entrances
like,
from the 2
it's like ground
doors.
level.
So we already have sort of 2 ground levels,
Right.
depending on what street you're on.
Yeah,
Are you
you're right.
on ground level? Or so
No,
right now,
I think that we're getting way into the weeds.
yeah, you
Yeah.
are, but I was told
While-
that you would have unlimited time, so.
While we're reading and interrupting you, I noticed that you were trying to capture the transportation as how do you get to the library, but to the point of autonomous vehicles or Ubers, which is how many people get around. Many of the younger people get around. You know, for a car, it doesn't automatically mean they would require a parking space,
Yeah.
so they might need a clear pickup drop-off lane. I mean, that might be, the more we want to use it as a community space, the more it would be an issue for parents to be dropping off a child and picking up a child in a safe manner.
Yeah, I think that's a great ad. I think we should definitely add
I just-
just drop off.
I just want to add, like, somebody who has to take this every day, because something to consider is senior driving is a challenge. And so they just take into consideration on, like, adding a parking space, like, because I think we have right now the data ride space, but, you have to have patience driving, and dad in a few minutes to make sure that,
You don't mow someone over.
well, that I know the car might take a little bit longer to take out, and so don't move somebody over and things, but just consider the use of the space on it, and then we have these one-way routes, so we have 3 one-way streets. And people accidentally, actually, one thing that has happened, they'll put a sign in some places says like, don't turn this way, but people go completely all the way the wrong ways. So it's fun to watch. Watch them they just keep committed to going the wrong way.
But I imagine we're gauging how many people are actually, how they're commuting to the senior center now, right? How many people are doing dial-a-ride and some of it.
That's why they have that in there. How do you get here?
Yeah. And I see it says library now, but I think we should probably remove the word library and
Senior center. and-
make it,
yes.
how do you arrive?
How do you get to the library?
Library and senior, or to the facility, you know, we can,
And in your site plan as well, we have, it's a little too.
okay. The other thing that we're doing is getting into the needs assessment. As always, we are building on some of the work that's already been previously done. So the library has done their strategic plan, and so we're making sure that we're incorporating that. We understand that the community center has also did a feasibility study back in 2016, so we're combing through that information and trying to understand what feedback was heard then. Now, that one was quite a bit older, so it may not be as relevant as the library strategic plan, but it still has some valuable information. We also just want to acknowledge that there's so many different needs on this site. We have the library, the seniors. I don't think we can discount just the idea that this is a park for the neighborhood and the amount of
When
activities.
you're
that
here
could
tomorrow,
happen.
you will see how this is a park.
Yeah, I've been here a couple times, and every time I'm amazed when I walk up how many people are just hanging out under the trees or in the lawn space. And the library does programs out there, and they utilize the outdoor space as well. And then, of course, the community room that city events and programs are happening out of, but also just the general community and public utilize that space. And so making sure that we are meeting the needs of all of these different user groups. And then, as Kathy alluded to, this idea of this Venn diagram, maybe something that you start to see in a remake of these boards is what are these library programs and services that are core to them? What are core programs and services for senior and community? And what are some shared spaces like community meeting rooms, meeting spaces, conference rooms, large multi-purpose room. Sorry, I've been talking since like noon, so
it may be,
It's been a long
it may
day.
be useful to make that into 3 instead of 2. So you
Yeah.
separate community center and senior center so that they're,
Sure.
again,
Yes,
people
yes, on the
feel.
boards, it will likely be 3, but this
Yeah.
idea that we will probably, rather than start to duplicate a performance space in 3 different categories, talk about a shared space for library and community performances. Because I think if, just to honor the request that it talks about library performance spaces, but also can serve other community performances. So we'll just get really into kind of wordsmithing some of that and making sure that we're not missing any of those key points. But this is a diagram that we're working with Lucy and Kathy and their teams and getting staff comfortable with this idea that there are going to be shared spaces, that they will each program individually. And so with that, some next steps, again, community engagement round 1, I think as Kathy alluded to, we were thinking of starting this in April, but then we realized if we're going to launch this flyer, the flyer has the community survey on it, and you don't want to hand anybody or go to anybody and ask them to get input, and they can't scan the QR code and get to a live survey.
Right.
So what we're proposing is to move the community survey up to when we actually start launching these events. And so that whatever that first event is, if it's March 17th or March 20th, whatever that first event that we're going to, based on the calendar that Kathy has started to prepare, that the survey is live and ready to go for that. So that means opening up the survey a little bit earlier and potentially extending it a little bit longer.
Isn't the draft of the survey? Have we seen the survey?
We basically build the survey off the boards. So we're working off the engagement boards and getting the in-person documents. And once we have that, we basically translate that into an online survey. We use the same images, the same words, and the same breakdown of
That's
information.
what Rich is.
Yes.
That's what we spent a lot of time talking about.
Yeah.
Just several of us are setting up, presentations. So I did hear earlier that we would have sort of a deadline for when it would be done. Do we have that yet, or?
So right now, we would like to not start any presentations until all this material is ready, because we don't want to go to anybody and talk about, hey, we're going to talk to you again, because then we'll have to come back. So we would love to, once we have the flyer and all the engagement boards and the online survey ready, then launch the community engagement and open up the survey. And then we didn't want to have the in-person events like the first next day, right? We want to launch it and have a couple weeks to get the word out and for the community to get these events on their calendar and be aware of the community meeting that's happening on April 10th. And then I know Dawn's working on getting a mailer in the municipal flyer.
I think we're looking
So-
at launching mid-March.
Got it, just because, if we're gonna get on agendas of these different, groups in March,
We
we sort of have to do it now.
Well, and it doesn't need to be in March. We have April,
Got
and
it.
we're gonna open it all the way until June 1st.
Okay,
But I think Tony's saying, because we want to be able to say, oh, we're having this event April 10th.
right.
We want them to know, so we're trying to look at that window of if we can get to these groups before that time.
For
Oh, yeah.
example, like for the, educational fund, their meeting is literally March 17th. So if we don't do it then, it'll be mid-April, past the April 10th date. So, which is fine, but we just.
And I mean, I probably shouldn't say it, but the April 10th date hasn't been announced. So if the April 10th needs to be April 20th or May 3rd, I mean, the point is to do it right.
Got it.
And launch it successfully and not, at this point, we haven't published any dates. We haven't announced any dates. So there's still some flexibility if we need to do that, but we would like to start it mid-March and in by June 1st. And we can move that community meeting. I mean, I'm Kathy's gonna be like, what? But I want it to be successful and I don't want it to be a driver and.
Right, it's just, I'm looking at that schedule and it looks like most of our meetings that we are lining up are all in March, like even as early as March 1st through March 30th. So should we just make sure that we get on agendas in April then?
So, and this is on the agenda, but I think that if you feel pretty confident that we'll be able to launch the stuff in mid-March, so like Monday the 17th, we could go ahead and get on the agendas of the meetings for the last 2 weeks of March. The 2 first weeks, I mean, you know, we'll still, all of the commissions, you can see them in April, I think, or, you know, if they're the second part of the month, but, I guess I don't know. I mean, I think this is the issue, right? We want to give people a heads up, but we don't have any of the materials and the talking points, and we're not really ready to do it. If you're already at Kiwanis, you could say, we want to let you know,
That's what
April 10th, the survey is going to launch hopefully March 17th. You know, like we won't have the little PowerPoint for them the first 2 weeks of March. We could offer to come back at their next meeting, but
We
you
could
could
let
also
them
give
know
them a
it's
heads
coming
up.
and then send them an email.
Or save the date.
What, yeah, I
Yeah,
did
it's a
that.
save the date. There
At
you
the,
go.
the February Oneonta Club meeting, I took 2 minutes and I said, we're in the process of preparing this. It's gonna be coming. Please watch for it. And we'll come back and talk to you again
Yeah.
when it's
That would
ready.
be-
But that way, because one of the things that we have a problem with in this community, and I think you probably have it in every community, is the people who are told 12 times, and then once it's done, go, nobody ever told me. So if we,
Too many times.
yeah, so if we tell them it's coming, oh, it's coming, hey, now here it is, and you'll see emails, you'll see ads, you'll see these things. So I don't think there's anything wrong with letting people know that we're gonna come back and give them
Okay.
specific data.
So it sounds like that's a good path forward. Any events that are happening early in March would be sort of a save the date. It's coming, be prepared. We're happy to lock in the April 10th date. You can share that date. It will be part of it. And then once we have the flyer and launched it, then those would be more of a presentation where you can, we're happy to prepare a short PowerPoint presentation that would be consistently used between all the commissions and any other stakeholder groups or community groups that would like a presentation, that we're delivering the same
That'd be
information
fantastic.
and same PowerPoint at all events. I don't think we want to be a long presentation, probably be a good 5-10 minutes maybe at the most, but mostly to get the word out and get them a good understanding of what the project's all about. And that would be, again, a deliverable that we can hand off. And I was talking to Kathy, we're happy to put speaker notes in it. So, you know, we want to have the speaker notes in it. You can sort of be prepared and read that and at least have some talking points that are consistent between whoever's providing that presentation.
That'd be fantastic.
Dawn, did you have something?
Just to supplement the conversation, I know that we're talking about, we got some really critical feedback tonight. We're gonna be turning around the images and some of the draft documents. We'll be sharing it with the mayor pro tem, and with Rich, possibly by tomorrow.
Well, we need Rich's input as well.
Of course, yeah, we
Yeah,
have
send Rich.
refined ideas that we want to share so we can sink our teeth into. I also wanted to share some of the communications aspects of what it is that the team has come up with. Once this is finalized, the things that we will be doing to supplement the outreach in the community, just so that it's something, it's an opportunity for us to chew on it tonight and get some feedback and see if there's anything that we're missing on our list. So in addition to a mailer going out to all utility holders within the community, so that'll be a physical mailer that goes out with that flyer to all residents and businesses, and that'll be through the Muni building. It'll go out on our socials. We have our e-newsletter. So to all of the groups that we're worried about timing of interacting with, we have a master distribution list that we're starting to build out. So there'll be multiple touch points with them in terms of keeping them engaged and updated. The website will have a sub-page, we'll have a website banner. We'll have all the hard copies on the public counters, A-frames, if you know, like the sandwich board frames with the QR code and the dedicated webpage on it. That will be at the various events, at the farmer's market, at facilities. There'll be a press release about it. We'll have some newspaper ads. I know that the mayor and mayor pro tem have recently engaged with the local papers about wanting to do some more robust communications, and this is a great starting point for that. We have the survey that'll be going out, which will also talk about upcoming dates in those community meetings, so that touch point also captures folks for that. We have the rec program quarterly that'll be going out. We have constant contact. We have our mobile app that we can do a push through. And I think it was mentioned early on, but we've already reached out to the school district to identify the top languages that are prevalent in our community. And so we will be providing in language translations specifically on the survey. There's an opportunity for folks to do that. So all of that was really critical and important to us, but I also wanted to take just a moment to hear back from you if there's anything. Oh, and additionally, street banners.
Banners.
So we're gonna do a banner at City Hall, we'll do banners on this building. And then I'm gonna be looking at what the schedule is for the street banners that you usually see, like fundraisers and upcoming events and things. And as long as it's not too disruptive to things that are already planned, that's also an opportunity for us. So it will be all over the city, right? Once we get this thing finalized.
And you'll still have a third of the people will say,
Yeah,
what?
And then I will ask them if they live in South Pasadena. So I wanted to share that with you because I think I want to instill some sense of trust that we are being really thoughtful in terms of how to get it out. But of course, you all live here. Please, if you have food for thought for us or suggestions or areas that you get some feedback or opportunities, we're open.
Yeah, no, and I just was gonna say, hope we get to this soon, because I think this is important now that we're all sitting around the table.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Yes, so as I said, we're looking at, this was the community survey that we started with, but again, definitely moving that up to March and extending that to June 1st. And some of that is to allow the city to do all of the wonderful things that Don has summarized, but the online paper kiosks. And then we do have the ad hoc committee during April, and we'll be back in April for that additional on-site where we will be doing the open house and the joint public meeting that would coincide with the joint meeting for the Board of Trustees and Community Services Commission. So these are just some upcoming events and meetings that we're looking at. That was the last slide.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope it was informational, and I apologize if we didn't get here sooner and kind of head off some of these concerns or questions earlier, but I think we're here now and we can start really getting into it, and I think build a successful campaign to get the word out. So very excited about it.
When do we have our next meeting to, would there be a follow-up to kind of,
Yeah.
is that next?
March 6th is what we have on the calendar right
Yeah,
now.
so that's on the agenda at the time before we had met today and had some of these conversations about the timing. One of the questions was, do we have business for the meeting next week? I think we do.
Yeah, we have quite a bit of action items,
Yeah,
right?
so I think that, I mean, it's up to you, but I think we should meet at our regular time next week.
And is that also going to be an opportunity to see kind of the next version of your
We hope
materials?
so. Yeah,
Okay, great.
I mean, we've
Yeah.
got a lot of work, but
So
yeah,
that was the idea. is
Okay.
that we
that's
do
the plan.
Get feedback today.
We hope to
and-
finalize with you all next week so that we can get ready and work backwards so we're all ready to launch in dividing up.
So we should spend some time in the intervening week reviewing our prior discussion about, community center, gathering ground, wherever, the taglines that we're thinking about, right? Generations gathering and growing, lifelong learning, all of those things, so that it'll be ideally a quick and facile discussion.
Oh, yeah.
I had received some input via email, which I added to the spreadsheet, but I also, I think I stopped the share, like you can't add to it because I wanted to capture it in that moment. So I may format that and put that back up, and I can send you guys the link and reconnect you to it. And I did share all of that language that you guys generated with this team as well. So, thank you. Very good input. Really helpful. I think that, I mean, as you said, right, every community is different, and we had to have a starting place. We started, and now we want to feedback and customize it and get it the way that it's going to work for this community. So the next, item on the agenda is reordering of additions or deletions to the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda? I think so. Okay, thank you. So the next item is regarding this outreach period. And again, at the time that we prepared this, we've been talking about March, the month that we're gonna do it. But I think we'll need to go back and create this calendar for March, April, and May. So we really have a sense of what are these meetings. And then the list is here. Again, this is the list that we generated. And I don't know, separate from when things are happening, if we want to go through the list and see wherever there's an unassigned group, whether anyone wants to take that on or can take that on. But again, I think that we're looking now at starting this outreach kind of March 17th and forward. It changes things a little bit. And we could talk about this again next week with an updated version of this, perhaps. Might be better.
But I mean, I would say if people have connections to any of these groups now,
Let me know.
let's say it, like,
Yeah, do you want to look at it and just,
chime in, because
Yeah.
we don't want a bunch of empty spaces and then people say, oh, no one came to my church or whatever, later.
and I think that, the group 14 talked to Lori Wheeler, we can go to Shop Talk, but you're also looking at doing, a meeting. Dawn, didn't you say that there's gonna be a meeting with the chamber and is add this on to?
Absolutely. There's gonna be sometime in March, April, we're gonna be doing an outreach to the business community because there's a number of things that we need feedback on. Holiday decor, beautification stuff, the mission, parklets, finalizing those transitions to the permanent parklets. So this is something that we can tag on because we keep hearing if there's too many touch points, we're gonna lose people. This is a good opportunity to kind of have a robust agenda and walk them through, give them updates and get stuff. So we'll take you back on it.
Yeah, so the chamber, yeah, I mean, 4, so that's next week. So I don't know if we'll go to that one. I haven't talked to Lori about that, so maybe that's April because we're gonna hit them in this other way. But we can also email Lori and ask her to share information for us, so there's other ways. So I think that the chamber in March is, we don't need to worry about that, the Shop Talk. Chinese American Club, that's 2 weeks out if we want to reach out to them. And at least give them a heads up, again, kind of the save the date idea and maybe not go to the person. So staff can do a lot of that if you want us, want staff just to do that outreach to these ones. In the later part of the month, so like we said, the 17th, the Preservation Foundation, I don't know if
I'll do that
anyone,
one.
Kristen could do the Preservation Foundation. So the next section is, they don't have meetings necessarily, so we'll be doing outreach to them via email or something to say, this is happening, this is coming. How do you want us to communicate it with your folks? Can you forward stuff? So we'll just have to find out kind of one by one with these other entities. The PTAs and SPUSD, I need to contact, we need to reach out and contact them to get agendized on their next meeting, next meetings. And we already go to the council, but we don't typically, the library goes to the council, but we don't typically go to each school's PTA, but we have all those contacts and we can reach out to them and same thing, go out and give them a, hey, this is coming, we're really excited. Stay tuned, but be prepared, this is gonna happen starting whenever. There's a private entity on there. Oh, Tony, that was, you have a connection to them, the South Pasadena Arts and Music Academy.
Yeah, I'll stop by
Okay,
and check in with them.
I'm happy to do Monterey Hills. It's, 5 doors down from me.
Yeah, they didn't, I don't know why we didn't have their information. I think that was here. I'll have to find out when that is. And that is the March 17th that Tony was just talking about. So fingers crossed, we'll have all the outreach materials, but I would go ahead and let's get you on the agenda.
Yeah, I'm actually on the agenda.
You're already on?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's done. That's great.
If you want to be on the March fifth agenda, I'm on the PTA, I'm already on another agenda item, so I could squeeze this in.
Which school?
Moringa.
Okay, that'd be great. And I don't know, again, I have to expand this into April to see who's meeting when in April. I didn't go that far out.
Yeah,
And
Kathy, on that point with like Rotary meeting in March, would that just be a save the date notice that kind of goes out? Sounds like maybe from
Yeah,
staff
I
having
mean,
built it out, and then I would
Wednesday-
actually present in April. But I'll have to keep this my work schedule, because I didn't know that they meet in the day, which is fine, but I just gotta plan for it.
Yeah, I think in the second week, we're not gonna have the materials
Yeah,
yet.
exactly.
So it's more of a, wanna let you know, we're getting excited, this is happening.
I can talk to the community garden.
You wanna do community garden?
Sure.
Just so I have this understanding, because I have 3 things that would be at the beginning of March, and I can't make any of them, but they're till the 11th. So I'm okay, right? Because there's gonna be save the date sent out to all those people.
Yes, well, so what are you?
WISPA,
Oh,
and
you have WISPA.
WISPA and
We're all gonna be there.
okay, and the
Yeah.
women's club too.
Yeah.
So I just
And
can't,
Wispa has a mailer, they'll.
Yeah,
they'll
they
put it
can,
out.
Betty will send it, whatever we ask her to
I'm
send.
just like, can't make any of those.
Yeah.
What was the other one?
Women's club.
Yeah, that's Sherry.
Sherry,
Yeah,
she'll
we'll
do
get
it. Sherry Plaquemine.
And you can also put me down to YMCA. I know there's no meetings, but I do take a bunch of classes there, and I'll announce the class and have stuff out. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
and we could reach out to
Yeah.
contact,
Yeah.
you know, we haven't done it, but. we
I
can
volunteered, but I
communicate
can't
with
go
them.
to any of them.
Probably when we have the material.
I can follow up with Vecinos and Care First.
Okay, we did talk to the seniors and they don't have any meetings
Yeah,
scheduled, but they're happy to share stuff.
The tenants union is having a meeting at the beginning of March. They have them infrequently, but I can find out when and if they're having one in early April.
So Rich, Air Force. FPUSD, the city has a regular meeting, which I think.
Quarterly ad hoc.
Yeah, and these Mayor Pro Tem also attend that, so we will talk to them about this.
We're not on this list.
That's John.
We're not
John.
the liaisons for that.
Okay, I thought I heard that the mayor attended those, but, okay.
I can talk to some of the dudes.
Okay.
Dudes.
Basically, it's just email Ed Donnelly about anything and.
Yeah.
Get it out there.
There you go. All I need to do. But it'd be good to have them knowing about it.
And South-Pasadena Gives would actually go under social media.
Say that again?
South-Pasadena Gives, that actually goes under social media.
Oh.
Is there an easy way to catch all the churches and religious places?
We have a distribution list.
For the church.
So everybody that we're all talking about doing this
Yeah.
personalized touch point with,
Yeah.
we have a distribution list. So they'll also be receiving it to share with their congregations or their
I
followers.
see.
So they get the digital format.
Any personal touch as well as nice.
Kathy, I know Eric, any at Blue League.
Oh, Lily.
It's got opening day coming up, March 7th.
So I'll update this and we can revisit it next week. We'll update the calendar April through the end of May. And that way we can revisit this next week and get a little bit more information and update it to reflect the changes that we've made. Is there anything else that anybody wants me to incorporate for next week? You can always email them too. Something comes up.
Kathy, for AYSO middle, we also have our commissioners.
Oh, that's right.
Alberto, Ocon, and Ryan. So we'll get to that. We'll share it with all of our commissioners.
Right.
We have a distribution list for them. But, you know.
The next item on the agenda was this discussion about, based on tonight's meeting and what we learned, whether we need to meet next week. I think we do, we've already decided that, and I think April, we should just wait and see. You know, these guys will be on site, and we don't have to decide now whether or not we have business in April. I mean, this committee, we always have a lot to do and talk about, so, but I think we can hold off on that unless someone feels really strongly that we need to decide right now. Okay, so we'll meet next week, have our regular meeting. And the last thing on the agenda is, just the approval of the minutes from the February 6th meeting. Is there any public comment, Melissa, on this one? You know, anybody have any issues, comments?
Yeah, just, there's a correction. I'm not with the library board of trustees. I'm an at-large member. So on the February, it's showing that I'm still the library board
What
on
February? Oh, okay,
February
sorry,
6th, yeah.
okay.
On the page 1, and
Got
then
it.
again on page 2, I was assigned a, well, I guess I could say former library board of trustees.
You know, that should be changed.
Yeah, so just need to change.
So if I can get a motion to approve
I
the
so
minutes as
moved.
amended,
Second.
Alexandria is the,
Made the
motion.
motion.
Kristen is the second.
All in favor?
Yeah, I think we can do all in favor.
Yeah.
We're all person. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
So I'm gonna abstain, I was not here.
One abstention. And the motion carries. And then we have just communications, if any community members have any comments that they want to share with us. No, okay, so we're gonna move on from there. Staff, Dom, anything else? Obviously, listening. No, I have nothing. So that's it. I'm gonna adjourn the meeting to our next regular meeting, which is next week. And adjourning at 9:22 p.m.
Thank you.
You guys in the morning at 8.